The Last Jedi is a really bad film. It's almost universally hated among Star Wars fans. Stay tuned and I'll share my thoughts on what went wrong. So where did Rian Johnson go wrong in piecing together his second installment of the Disney Star Wars trilogy? Well, everywhere. Let's start with something fundamental about Star Wars and how it differs from other science fiction genres. And that is, Star Wars doesn't bother to try to explain the science behind all of its technological devices. It's not Star Trek. Star Wars doesn't need to engage in this technobabble in order for fans to enjoy it. And when Star Wars attempted to provide some scientific explanation for one of its key elements, the prevailing reaction was derision. I can sum it up in one word: midi-chlorians. You see, nobody cared how the Force worked. It was mysterious. It was meant to be mysterious. It was meant to be a matter of faith. And when George Lucas tried to give it a rational explanation, he failed miserably. And that's because Star Wars really isn't science fiction. It's been called a space opera. It's just another way of saying that Star Wars is fantasy. But instead of being set in a magical world of the past with fairies and wizards, it's set in a futuristic, technologically advanced universe where things that seem impossible to us can just be chalked up as being part of the result of advanced technology. And yes, I am aware that Star Wars says it takes place a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. That opening crawl was meant to mimic fairy tales. It was meant to emphasize that it takes place in a universe that is unlike ours, where some things that happen will seem like magic. And that is one of the mistakes that Rian Johnson made when he was trying to tell his Star Wars story. From the very beginning of the movie, he invited his audience to question the technology. He confused Star Wars and Star Trek, inviting an analysis of the technology and engaging in technobabble. Let's look at the opening scene of The Last Jedi. Johnson presents us with a massive space battle. The First Order's powerful ships, including the feared Dreadnought, was up against this ragtag fleet of the Resistance. And when attacking the Dreadnought, the Resistance used this fleet of bombers. Now, this isn't the first time that bombers have been used in the Star Wars universe. If you remember back to The Empire Strikes Back, we had TIE bombers that tried to flush out where Han and Leia were hiding when they were on the asteroid. We saw Jango Fett use some sort of sonic or seismic bombs in order to escape from Obi-Wan when he was hiding in an asteroid field in Attack of the Clones. But in The Last Jedi, these bombers had huge bays with lines and lines of bombs lined up. And all the pilot had to do in order to use those bombs was open a bomb bay door and then let the bombs drop on its target. The bombers were intentionally reminiscent of the B-52s that the United States used in the Second World War. But here's where Rian Johnson invited us to question the technology. For that to work, don't you need gravity? This has become the source of an endless debate among Star Wars fans online. Some claim that the bombs were magnetic, and that explains it. But if they were magnetic, that only raises the question, how is this plausible? Wouldn't they just stick to the metal hull of the bomber that was dropping them? I'm sure this argument could go on forever. And quite frankly, that's the point. Star Wars isn't supposed to invite these type of deep technological debates. It's fantasy more than a tale of science fiction. To put it another way, we really weren't meant to look at how the sausage was made. We're just supposed to heat up the brats, throw it in a bun, and enjoy. Yet, throughout the film, Johnson continues with this invitation to question the science behind all the technology. Take hyperspace for an example. How does it work? Well, I don't know. Nobody does. It was a totally made-up technology to address how traveling light years away can seem like a trip to another state. How long does it take to get from Tatooine to Alderaan? For as long as it takes for Luke and Ben to develop a relationship with Han and Chewie. It didn't need a scientific explanation. It just happened. But suddenly, Johnson is obsessed with rules. How does hyperspace work? Hey, did you know that you can't be tracked going through hyperspace? Well, at least until you knew that that was a rule of hyperspace. Now all of a sudden we're told, hey, the First Order has found a way to track people through hyperspace.
They've tracked us through light speed.
That's impossible.
Yes.
Where did that come from? And Vice Admiral Holdo? She's figured out a way to use hyperspace as a weapon! These weren't even questions that were brought up in prior Star Wars movies. The fans of the movies really didn't care. The most we ever got was Han Solo's throwaway line that hyperspace isn't like dust and crops, boy.
How long before you can make the jump to light speed?
Take a few moments to get the coordinates from the Navi computer.
You kidding? At the rate they're gaining?
Traveling through hyperspace ain't like dust and crops, boy. Without precise calculations, we'd fly right through a star or bounce too close to a supernova and then it end your trip real quick, wouldn't it?
And that's it. And it didn't matter. Hyperspace was just how you got from one planet to another. The science of hyperspace, or should I say the pseudoscience, was never meant to be an integral part of the plot. Making it so alienated a good part of the fan base who don't go to Star Wars movies to get a science lesson. They go to enjoy the action. You can't really enjoy the action if you need to digest complex yet nonsensical rules about completely fictional technology. Not to belabor the point, but Star Trek does that. And Star Trek has a really distinct set of fans who enjoy that kind of thing. Heck, I enjoy it from Star Trek from time to time. But that's not Star Wars. Which leads us to the question of how do the main parties even acquire this technology? In the original Star Wars trilogy, this didn't need to be explained. The bad guy was the Empire, the prevailing government in the galaxy. Presumably, it had the resources to make a planet-killing weapon. The rebellion was a desperate alliance of a number of planets. They cobbled together what weaponry they could. And you can see this in the way their technology was depicted. The Empire's spaceships, for example, were sleek and powerful. Meanwhile, the rebellion ships were kind of like flying pickles. But Rian Johnson needed to make a commentary on the industrial military complex that supplies both sides. This led us into that completely unnecessary and boring and unappealing subplot of Rose and Finn going to that casino planet Canto Bight. Now we've got this class of super rich aliens manipulating both sides of the conflict so they can sell high-tech weaponry. But we still have no idea who the First Order is. Unlike the original Star Wars, we know that the First Order isn't an oppressive government. J.J. Abrams made that clear when the First Order blew away the Republic in The Force Awakens. So is it a terrorist group? The paramilitary wing of an ultranationalist political party? And how did it get the money for all this technology? There was this weird hint that somewhere in the galaxy there was an entity that somehow kept order to protect the super rich and protect a little playground. Is that what Star Wars is supposed to be about? George Lucas made Star Wars about a galactic struggle between good and evil. It's why it works. You have a clear side to root for. But Johnson throws all that out the window. Now it's this weird existential question of whether concepts of good and evil even exist. Good and evil, they don't matter. And this makes the entire saga pointless. And second, it bleeds into one of the worst aspects of Johnson's movie. And that is the ruination of Star Wars' greatest hero, Luke Skywalker. This movie takes the epitome of the champion of good who refused to give up despite overwhelming odds, despite a father who became corrupt and turned him into a jaded hermit. With all due respect to Overly Sarcastic Productions, a link to their video is going to be in the description box below. They helped develop this argument. Luke refused to give up on redeeming his father, even when he faced the doubts of his two mentors, Obi-Wan and Yoda. Yet, he gives up on the Jedi Order all because his nephew is turning to the dark side? Indeed, Luke's very nature is put into doubt as he almost commits cold-blooded murder against his very nephew. This is beyond confusing for fans who just wanted to see another epic battle between good and evil. Now we're presented with this nihilistic view of the universe, which was beyond depressing. And I haven't even touched on the ridiculous characterization of Rey, Finn, Poe, Rose. By the way, I don't buy into this Mary Sue argument that a couple of Star Wars fans are making about Rey. I actually think some of the detractors of the Disney films make this issue far too political. Also, because most of the detractors are males who apparently can't stand to see the overt sexual objectification of female Star Wars characters be replaced by strong, independent female leads, I find that portion of the Star Wars fan base bigoted and chauvinistic. At any rate, even with all the imperfections of The Force Awakens, it teed up a decent trajectory for subsequent Star Wars films to take. I believe Rian Johnson took that and threw it out the window. He decided instead to make this cynical, nihilistic picture of the Star Wars universe, ignoring everything about Star Wars that the fans had loved. The damage that it did to Star Wars was so great that it doomed the efforts of J.J. Abrams, who is admittedly a lazy writer, to fix the problems The Last Jedi created before Abrams even had a chance to address them. My name's Bill Kovacs. I'm the creator and primary contributor to the dantooinefreepress. So I'm fighting cancer and I'm also disabled. If you feel generous enough to make a small one-time donation, you can do so through PayPal. I'll have instructions in the description below. A non-tax deductible donation will go to a special needs trust set up for my benefit that will help pay my expenses. Thank you for watching. Please consider subscribing to our channel and give us a like. Let us know in the comments below what topics you would like to see in the future. And hit that bell button if you would like to receive notification of whenever we release a new video.